The only true wisdom is in knowing you know nothing. That one sentence got a man killed. But the question is, could it also save your life? The man who knew nothing knew enough to begin. And maybe that's where your journey begins, too. Not with answers, but with the question that brought you here. Stay with this video, because somewhere in this story is an answer you didn't know you were looking for.
You've been lied to your entire life. Not by your parents, not by your teachers, but by the voice inside your own head, the one that says, you already know. But here's the truth. That voice is your greatest obstacle, because knowledge, real knowledge, begins the moment you admit you don't have it. We've grown up in a world where confidence is king. The job goes to the guy who sounds like he knows. The influencer gets millions of views for sounding sure. But what if I told you that the man who's considered the wisest in all of history claimed to know absolutely nothing? Who? His name was Socrates. He walked barefoot through the streets of Athens. He had no books, no money, no political power, and yet his thoughts shook the very foundations of Western civilization. But more than that, his thinking can free you from false certainty, from shallow living, from yourself. Why this matters? Because you are surrounded by noise, overconfident advice, empty certainty. And if you don't learn how to ask better questions, you're going to spend your entire life solving the wrong problems. And Socrates, he can teach you how to live better, not by giving you answers, but by changing how you question everything. When you hear the word philosopher, you might imagine a wise old man on a mountaintop, handing out advice like a vending machine. But Socrates wasn't that. He didn't preach from a podium. He didn't sell truth. He simply asked and asked and asked. He walked into people's lives, politicians, poets, generals, and held up a mirror. He didn't say, "Here's how to live." He said, "Why do you think that's true?" And most couldn't answer. We're living in an age where everyone wants to speak. Everyone has a take, but few people ask. Fewer still listen. And here's the kicker. Socrates asked so many questions that people started to hate him for it. He annoyed them, challenged them. Eventually, they killed him for it. Which brings us to the core of Socratic wisdom. I know that I know nothing. It sounds simple, almost too simple, but it's one of the most radical and dangerous ideas ever spoken. Athens was the Silicon Valley of the ancient world. Wealth, innovation, politics, art. Everyone claimed to know. Then here comes this scruffy man in sandals saying, "No, you don't." And people listened. But ask yourself this, could you admit that you might be wrong about everything? Your politics, your career path, even your relationships? Because Socrates would challenge you to do just that. Today, we build identities around having the answer. He built his identity around never pretending to have one. And ironically, that's why he was called the wisest man in Athens, because he was the only one wise enough to admit he didn't know. The real villain in Socratic wisdom? The illusion of knowledge. It's not ignorance. It's thinking you already know when you don't. Think about your own life. How often have you argued just to win? How often do you scroll social media not to learn, but to reinforce what you already believe? That's not curiosity. That's ego in a clever disguise. Socrates was heroic not because he was clever, but because he was brave enough to be uncertain. In public. That's a kind of intellectual courage most of us never practice. Now here's where it gets terrifying. Because when he challenged the wrong people, powerful people, they didn't just disagree, they decided to silence him with death. The greatest thinker of the ancient world didn't die in battle. He died in prison, drinking poison, because he refused to stop asking questions. Imagine that. You're told, stop challenging us, stop making people think. And instead of apologizing, you say, the unexamined life is not worth living. And then, you drink the poison yourself. In a world where people delete tweets out of fear, he died for a single belief, that asking questions, honestly, is the only path to real wisdom. But this isn't just about a man who died 2,400 years ago. This is about you. Because right now, in your life, you are surrounded by choices you're making without question, beliefs you inherited, dreams you didn't choose, habits you never examined, and maybe, just maybe, it's time to kill those illusions. Here are the types of questions Socrates would ask you if he met you on the street today. Why do you do what you do? What do you actually know, for sure? What would it take to prove you wrong? Are you living your life, or someone else's idea of one? Now pause, read those again. Because if you really answered them, your life might begin to shift. It's like being blindfolded in a maze your entire life. And Socratic questioning is the moment you rip the blindfold off. You still have to walk. But now at least, you're not stumbling in the dark. Now Socrates never wrote a single word. We only know his thoughts because his students, like Plato, believed in them so much they couldn't bear to let them die. But here's the twist. Socrates didn't want followers. He wanted thinkers. He didn't want students. He wanted equals. Imagine you're standing where he once stood, in the middle of the Athenian marketplace. Crowds swirl around you, people yelling, buying, selling, preaching. And you just stand still and ask a question. That's where it begins. So here's your challenge. For the next 7 days, question everything you assume, not cynically, but with genuine curiosity. Why do you believe what you believe? Who told you those were your limits? What if they were wrong? Ask like your life depends on it. Because in a way, it does. Socrates was executed for corrupting the youth, but maybe what he was really guilty of was waking them up. Now it's your turn to wake up, to ask, to live, because the unexamined life may be easy, but it will never be wise.